All right, welcome back to another episode of On Authentic Leadership with the Colonel and the Coach, sponsored by Cloche Hockey. Really excited for our guest today. We have the head coach and the sporting director of the Vermont Green. They recently won the USL 2 championship. We've been spoiled in the state of Vermont with some amazing soccer here this year, and would just like to take a minute and thank Chris and Adam for joining us here today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
I know Adam. We work together, and if you could start just on a bigger picture of how you got to Vermont, and then maybe the formation of the Green 4 years ago. So if you could kind of bring us to there, and then hand it off to Chris.
Yeah, so I came to Vermont 11 years ago now. I was working in Boston at Northeastern University and had spent, almost my whole life in the Boston area. I went to Boston College and played soccer there, and then started coaching at BC, and then quickly moved on to Northeastern. I was working there for 8 years. I met my wife there. Is a field hockey coach, became the head coach here at the University of Vermont. And so we moved up here. I was kind of in no man's land. Vermont is an interesting place in terms of, the largest portion of the population is pretty isolated from, the rest of the US and many of the major cities. And so I didn't know a lot of people up here. I didn't know a lot of people in the soccer world, whereas I knew everybody in New Hampshire and, Massachusetts and Connecticut and Rhode Island. And so, I was fortunate to fall into a job at Norwich, and I was fortunate that Cam Ellsworth came up and was one of my best friends in the world for quite a long time. One of the things that hurt the most about leaving Norwich was leaving Cam, to be honest. That was difficult, but needed to make some changes for the family. And in that time, through COVID, the idea for the Vermont Green kind of was hatched. One of those things that it was such like a crazy idea, and so many of these clubs pop up and don't work, that it was the kind of thing that could only be really thought through well through COVID. And there was an idea to bring a club that really sort of embodied what the community here cares about, and really the kinds of things that really motivate people here in Burlington. And climate justice, social justice, those are things that people are very passionate about here. And so that was kind of, it was a soccer club that would do work on those issues. And we've been able to, Chris and I have been in charge of the soccer side of the club since its inception, and we've been able to build all that up. So, the marketing of the club is fantastic. You see all the stuff on social media and all that, the visual identity of the club, the crest, the uniforms, the artwork around the club. It's all very Vermont, very, very unique. And we've been able to build a really good soccer culture here as well. And we wanted to be, the USL 2 is really a place for aspiring, professional soccer players to go and play in the summer and kind of fill that gap when they're not, at their colleges. Soccer in the US and colleges is a little bit limited from the standpoint that the season's really only in the fall, and then the spring there's a lot of training. You're only allowed to play a few matches. And so there has to be, for those sort of 18 to 23-year-old players, there's got to be a place for them to continue to develop and to continue to stay fit and be playing and training at a high level. And so that's what USL 2 is for. It's for amateur players. And for us, like we went after the best players in the country, and it took us a few years to really get it right. But, this past year, we were able to put together a team that I think we felt was the best squad in the country. And Chris was able to keep all that together and keep all those kinds of, these guys coming from all different parts of the world and all different parts of the US and different colleges and different ideas of how the game is played, and bring all that together and have this cohesive group that was undefeated, didn't lose a game the entire season. And, Chris had a ton of challenges within that. Like we felt like we had the best team, but with that, like he had to pick 19 squads, 19 different starting lineups in our 19 games that we played. Like, that is crazy. Obviously, you would like to be able to have some continuity and pick the same team every day. And because of some of the challenges in USL 2 with players coming in and out, guys going to MLS clubs to train, guys going home to see their families. A lot of these international guys don't get to see their families at all during the year. So, some guys would go home for a couple of weeks, guys getting called back by their colleges. So there's a lot of things that interrupt sort of what would be a traditional sort of cohesive unit. And Chris masterfully kept that all together, kept everybody motivated. and went unbeaten through the year, and incredible comebacks and times where we were completely dominant, times where we were up against it. It was a remarkable job that he did, and we have an incredible following. We've got the best fan base in the country. Every game is sold out. The overflow crowds at all the playoff games, and really the games through the end of the season. I mean, our stadium fits 2,500. There were no less than 3,000 people at all of our games, probably throughout the season. People standing on the outside, and then by the end of the last, really throughout the whole playoffs, there were people behind the stadium. They had to take all the signage down so that people could see in. All the windscreens and stuff like that. That all got taken down. There were people climbing on porta potties, on sheds. There were people breaking into the facility that we had to, get a little bit more security and stuff like that. So I think at the final, there were at least 5,000 people there, but the tickets sold out in like 2 seconds for all the playoff games, like literally 2 seconds. And, we could have had 15 to 20,000 people at that final easily. And that would be a conservative estimate, but we just don't have the space for it. But it was, so there was a real groundswell, and it's very much a community club, and it was a really special year. Sorry, that was long.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, to follow on, I'm originally from Liverpool, England. Grew up there, lived there till I was 18, and I was an aspiring professional player, like a lot of people. And I was fortunate enough to be in some of these professional academies growing up, and I really thought I was on that trajectory to be a professional player, and it didn't work out. I really wasn't at the level in the end. I was always good enough to get in the door at a lot of the really good clubs in my area in Liverpool, but wasn't good enough to stick around and be paid to do it. And so, I went on a little bit of a journey when I was 18. I'd been released from a couple of clubs and wasn't really enjoying playing that much at that point, and took a couple of risks in life. As I look back, I was probably drifting a little bit and was looking for somewhere to call home and looking for somewhere to fit, and took a short-term opportunity to come over to the US and just do a bit of summer coaching, summer camp coaching, like, almost like a gap year from college. But I hadn't been to college where I'm from in Liverpool. Not many people go to college. None of my family had been to college or anything like that. But while I was in the US, got some opportunities through people I knew or people I coach with. I started playing a bit of men's league with some college coaches, and the idea of going to college and playing soccer and getting an education was brought forward to me, which I had no idea about. I didn't know anything about college soccer at that point. This was back in 2006. So, I hadn't really done much formal education at that point. I was concentrating on being a professional player, and I'd pretty much left school at 16. And so through a winding road of different coaches, I ended up essentially being sent. I don't think I ever chose to come up here, but I ended up being sent to Plattsburgh State in upstate New York. A couple of schools that had wanted me to go, wasn't eligible to play Division One because of my lack of formal education. And the coach up here at Plattsburgh State was one of those who'd been around for 25, 30 years, one of the winningest coaches in college soccer. He had a lot of connections, and he was known as a guy that would take a stray like me and maybe get them ready to go somewhere else. So without visiting, without even knowing where I was going, I hopped on a train up to Plattsburgh, which I didn't realize at the time New York was bigger than England as a state. So I was like, I had no idea, and I'm on this 7-hour train up to Plattsburgh, and I'm like, where on earth am I going? But honestly, to be blunt, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And the idea was I was coming up to Plattsburgh for a year. They were going to sort me out, and they were going to pack me off to a different school and play. And when the time came for that, I said no. I didn't want to leave. I was incredibly happy at Plattsburgh. I finally had a coach that I felt a real connection to. And the best way to describe it was I'd finally found a coach that saw the things I could do and not the things I couldn't do. There was plenty of coaches who knew what I couldn't do, and they were plainly obvious, but this one guy didn't care. He saw what I could do, and I felt so at home. So I ended up staying at Plattsburgh, getting an education, which my mum was incredibly happy about, and a long and circular path. I'm now the head coach of Plattsburgh after Probably, I think it took me about 6-7 years after graduating to get back here, but that was always my goal. Got lucky that, for my family and me, this was the best opportunity for me to be a college head coach and have a happy family. So incredibly fortunate to do that. And then Vermont came along. We're only an hour from Vermont. We're across Lake Champlain. And although I love Plattsburgh and I've been really happy coaching here, coaching at Division 3 doesn't always scratch that itch of working with real high performers, like elite performers. And that's something I felt that I really wanted to do, but I didn't know if I'd ever get that opportunity, given I was going to be settled in this area for probably the rest of my career. And so I heard about Vermont. I heard something was happening in terms of USL2 and a potential club. And I heard Adam was involved. And I didn't know Adam. I knew who he was just through, college coaching, but we'd never met. I did what every person who wants an opportunity did. I just started reaching out and, I'm not good at that sort of thing. I'm not the best networker in the world. I'm very comfortable in my own space, and I'm not someone who loves self-promotion or anything like that. It's not something that comes naturally to me. But I was kind of like, if there's something here, I really want to be involved. So, and I've used this term a few times, but I think I begged my way onto the staff with Adam. I just kind of kept texting and being like, hey, if you need anybody to just volunteer, I'll pick up the cones. I'll do anything. I don't need to be paid. It's not about that. I just want to be involved in high level soccer. And this was the opportunity to do it. And luckily, when Adam and I finally kind of met and started working together, it just worked. We got along really well. And I think similar to Adam's experience, you're in some of the parts of the US where maybe soccer's not big, and maybe there's not a lot of people who know or have been involved in a high level of soccer. But Adam was there in Vermont, who's got an incredible background. And I was like, this is what I've been missing. Someone to talk about the game at a high level with, someone who maybe has the experiences that I'm interested in, and the relationship worked from day one. And I've been really lucky to be involved with Vermont from day one. And as Adam said, we had maybe discussions a little earlier, in the first couple of years about me maybe taking over, but I was enjoying that different feel of being a college head coach, but also being an assistant. I at the time, I'm only 38 now. 4 years ago, I still felt a young coach and still felt I had a ton to learn. And I became a college head coach at 26. So I skipped a lot of steps in my development, which isn't always a good thing. And I still felt I had some things that I needed to develop. And Adam had these experiences at Division 1 and places I hadn't been. So I loved being exposed to different challenges. And obviously this past year got the chance to take over. I felt I was ready at that point. And I felt, from a competitive point of view, okay, I want to see if I can do this. I think I've got an opportunity to work with some of the best players in the country, but can I do it? I thought I was a good coach, but again, getting the respect and the credibility with these top players isn't easy. So obviously we had a dream season. I think so many things came together outside the coaching to make that work, but definitely the highlight of my career so far. So I'm happy to talk about it as much as we want.
That's awesome.
Question, Adam, is that the cup, the trophy behind you, or
Yes.
Nice.
There she is.
She seems meaty. I love it.
She's nice. I keep this behind me for the recruiting phone calls.
Yeah, totally.
It's a good one.
The only thing I want to say at this time is, to Adam, for just being the leader of the vision for the Vermont Green and making that vision a reality. Just congratulations.
Want to be very clear, like the overall vision for the club was this guy named Matt Wolf. He's the one who designs like all this stuff. He designs all the uniforms. He designs uniforms for, the new Minnesota Twins, the rebrand they did a couple of years ago. Like that was him. He did the new LA Clippers, like all their new type. And, he did all that. He does uniforms and brand designs for some of the biggest clubs in the world. So the marketing of the club, the vision behind the club, that was him and Sam Glickman and Pat Inferna. But yeah, like we had the vision for how the soccer would work, what we were going to need and the kinds of players. And so, yeah, I appreciate that. And it's been gratifying to get over the line this year. But you turn the page so fast after these, we had this great success. August 2nd, our players were all in preseason. August 4th, which is just wild. Like 2 days later, like they were gone. They're all gone. Like we had flights booked out for all of them the next day. They're all gone. So we had no time to celebrate. And it was like, all right, like I guess I guess we got to start thinking about next year. And so that's kind of where we turn the page pretty quick. But that's how it is, right?
Adam, how did you get in touch with, like, or how did they get in touch with you, these guys with the vision, the Wolves of the world? Like, how did
Yeah.
that connection happen?
So like I said, this whole thing was so COVID. Like I was sitting with, we had two families basically that we hung out with at that time. It was you. Then we had another family that was at UVM, Krista Corin, who works at UVM. And they had approached her because she, is here and they were going to need a facility. And so they had presented, basically given them a pitch deck to Jeff Schulman and the people at UVM because they were going to need a facility. And so she showed me the deck and I looked through it and I could see the holes in it. And the holes were just the soccer stuff. And I had been thinking about this for years. I had played in this league and, when I was in between seasons at Boston College, and I knew kind of what it was. I knew the kind of players we were going to need. I knew, what we were going to need in terms of, housing and meals and, how we were going to set up our schedule, what the training needed to look like, what the pitch was going to be to college coaches. Because, these guys, like I said, like our season ended the 2nd. Those guys were in preseason on the 4th. So we had to make sure that we had a big enough squad so that we could rotate the team throughout the summer. Soccer, different from hockey where you can come in and out of the game. In soccer, at this level, there's no re-entry. So once you come off the field, you're done for the game. So we have we have 3 windows. It's 3 windows, right? Yeah. We have 3 windows during the course of the game to make subs. In college now they've got 6. So I'm like going from one season to the next watching these games and getting confused. But yeah, we have 3 windows to make subs. The halftime doesn't count as a window. And at the time, we were only allowed to have 18 players on the match day roster. So you start 11, there's 7 guys on the bench. Typically there's 1 goalkeeper in case there's an injury. So you have 6 guys that you could put into the game. And because of that kind of stress on your body in a 90-minute soccer game, you've got to be able to rotate these guys throughout the summer. So we needed to be able to have a big enough squad of high quality players that we could, give guys a rest throughout the course of the season, but also take some hits in terms of like, we needed to be able to tell the top players like, hey, if, the LA Galaxy want you to go and train with them for a week or 2, like you could do that, go and do that and come back. But we have a big enough squad to be able to miss that player. And so, between that, guys getting called, a lot of colleges, because the soccer season starts in basically the beginning of August. A lot of coaches want those players to come back maybe in the middle of July. Some of them, it's like the beginning of July. They want them back at the school. Sometimes they want them taking summer classes and working out with the strength coach. So that roster needed to be robust enough to take those kinds of hits, and we needed to continue to be able to recruit throughout the year and sign players. We can sign players until right before the playoffs start. And we went into our first season knowing what those issues were going to be. I think I had a pretty good idea how to sell it to college coaches. We didn't have the visuals of the big crowds. We didn't have the uniforms and the, all the visual identity of the club that first year. Like none of that. That was all belief that it would be there. So yeah, it's that was basically like I got that pitch deck. I looked at it and then I wanted to, I reached out to those guys and was like through Krista and was like, I want to speak to them. And I was remember I was working at that Windridge camp that first summer when COVID kind of relaxed a little bit. And I had an opportunity I just wanted to work because, we were all kind of in our houses and I just wanted to be out. And I remember meeting with them, taking some time off during the day at that camp and meeting with Matt Wolf. And just kind of giving him what my vision was for what a USL2 club would look like and, what the league was. Like they didn't even know what league they wanted to be in. There's several sort of summer amateur leagues, but USL2 is definitely the top one where the best players go to play. And we were, they brought me on board and, like I said, like Chris talked about, I don't remember Chris begging me as much as he seems to remember. Honestly, it was Stage Davis who was at Norwich that was like, hey, this guy's great. And I was like, I don't believe you, Stage. But eventually we got, we got to that point where I actually met with Chris and talked to him. And I was like, this is the guy. Like, I have to be with this guy. And like, it took like one session for me to like hand everything over and just be like, you're running the sessions. Because he's like an artist with how he runs a session, how he sets it up, the energy that he brings to it, and some of the ideas. And then we're very aligned with how we see the game. One of the visions that I had for the team was that we were going to play pretty expansive, attractive, possession-based soccer. That it was going to be pretty and look nice, and a lot of that was that's how I see the game. That's how I wanted to play. But some of it too was like, it's really hot out in the summer. The games are not going to be, we don't want to be giving up possession all the time and then having to chase and get the ball back. We wanted to be able to keep it and dictate the tempo of the game. So that was part of it. Part of it was just, that's how a lot of players grow up wanting to play. They want to express themselves. And so, for us, like we weren't at that time, we weren't really like saying, we didn't have vision that we were going to be in the playoffs, win a national championship and do all that stuff. Like, well, I just wanted to get the players here. So part of it was just like, hey, like, this is how we're going to play. We're going to, you're going to have an opportunity to express yourself, and we're going to be expansive, and we're going to have the ball. And, that's attractive to a lot of players. So that was part of it as well. But Chris knew how to really put that into practice and really develop sessions that emphasized those traits that were necessary for a team and that wanted to play that way. And so it was clear to me very quickly that it was gonna work out. And we saw players very similarly. I think I was a little bit, because I felt so much responsibility for these guys, their health and well-being when they came here. I didn't want to have players having bad injury, picking up sort of season-ending injuries that would carry into their college seasons. I was really nervous about, overuse and things like that. So the first couple of years, maybe the sessions, I'd be holding Chris back, and maybe the sessions weren't as intense as they needed to be for us to be like in the way that you have to be to win stuff. And, this year, like the sessions were running like a half hour longer, and I'm up in the press box, like freaking out, like, waiting for phone calls. And I got a few phone calls from coaches this year. But at the end of the day, in my heart, I know that that's what it takes to win. And so we put more of a priority on that. And Chris, like I said, like, just did a masterful job of balancing everything. And again, like, we had no major injuries. Our guys are in college right now and performing at an extremely high level. But yeah, it was an interesting sort of process over the last 4 years, and how the team has developed and how Chris has taken us to the next level on the field. And then, part of having him worrying about the day-to-day and managing the players and the team and, preparation for opposition and all that kind of stuff, it allowed me to continue to tinker with the squad throughout the summer. The last game of our season, I want to say, was July 12th or 13th. We had until like July 13th to sign players, and we literally signed 2 guys that one of the guys won us the penalty in the final that got us our first goal, and the other guy that we signed on the 13th scored the winner. And so, knowing that we were going to have to we were going to have comings and goings, and we had guys that went back to college that we had to talk to their college coaches and convince them to let them come back for the playoffs and things like that. Like, it allowed me the space to continue to work on those things, and Chris to put his head down with the group, and it worked out really well.
Chris, one of the things that you bring, just being from Liverpool, is just, and I spent probably half my Air Force career in Europe, and soccer is a global phenomenon. I mean, it really is. And I spent a lot of time in South America too, just through the military. And if a town or a village or whatever had a soccer ball, like, that would keep kids occupied for hours, days, and all that sort of stuff. And it was just prized, right? When someone had a soccer ball, or football, that was the thing, right? And there's a lot of American sports, namely football, hockey, baseball, all that sort of stuff. It requires an exceptional amount of equipment. It requires a field in a lot of cases, and rule sets and all that sort of stuff. And I would like you to talk about, especially being that the roster, you guys have an exceptionally eclectic roster of individuals and teammates from all over the world. Just if you could just talk to, you being from Liverpool, not necessarily, exclusively, but just, I think you bring a very unique perspective as the head coach of your collegiate team as well as the Green. And I think there's an appeal to that, right? And I think there's a passion to that. You grew up in that world. We grew up in the world of American football. We grew up in the world of American baseball. It's different. And for the folks that don't necessarily see that, I just would like to give you the opportunity to explain how it is different, because I see that it's different. I lived outside Dusseldorf. I lived in Italy and all that sort of stuff. And the passion, every game you think is just the the championship, right? And it's a regular season game, but it's banana land, right? But because I think that what you're trying to do is, just correct me if I'm wrong, is you're trying to bring that passion that you grew up with to your team in Plattsburgh, to the Vermont Green, and all that sort of stuff. And Cam and I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk to that, because I think it's important. Because if a country of 330 million people cannot generate a World Cup team, cannot generate a gold medal, obviously culturally there's something that maybe we're doing wrong, or maybe not doing as right as we could. And I just wanted to give you a chance to talk to that. And hopefully my question made sense. Over.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the best answer is, to me, like, football and soccer, like, it's literally been my life. It's been the only thing that has probably driven me to do anything I've ever done, because
Right.
it's so crucial to the day-to-day of where I grew up. So where I'm from, Liverpool, there's two teams, Liverpool and Everton. You're not separated geographically. It's literally, which team does your dad support? And you're born into it. And I was very lucky that my dad was a Liverpool fan and I wasn't forced to be an Everton fan, because I would have been so miserable. And I'm lucky that I support one of the best teams in the world. But
Well, tell them who we were on with the other day.
yeah, we did a podcast with Tim Howard and Landon Donovan, who both played for Everton, which is just so unfortunate for them. But they understand how important it is that I was born into a Red family, a Liverpool family. But honestly, like, you know, I went to this all boys school, and it was like a jungle. It was inner city Liverpool, where all you're doing in your classes is picking teams for lunchtime, for when you play, right? Who's brought the ball today? They're in charge of the game. And as you said, the ball's the most important part, and you almost wanted to have the ball because you were crucial to that game. And so those lunchtime games, they defined your day, right? We had an hour. Everyone brought a snack in the bag. No one's going into the cafeteria to eat because you're going to miss some of the game. And that's how important it was. And then, you know, I remember as well, every day after school, your entire grade would be going to the local fields. And I had a field by my house that had 10 fields on it, just a public park essentially, and you've got goals on it. And I relate it a little bit to maybe basketball in the US, where there's just hoops on every corner and you get this street culture. Our entire grade would go to these fields after school, and the second half of the game kicked off then, you know, and you kept score from lunchtime. And again, that's crucial to what happens the next day. And this is why I didn't have much of a formal education, because this is all we ever cared about. But what I mean is, like, how Liverpool did on the weekend was crucial to what the mood of the city was on the Monday. Because if Liverpool didn't win and Everton did, I had to be prepared on Monday to battle every Evertonian that they had something to say to me. And Liverpool actually just played Everton last weekend, and that result is absolutely massive for the people going to work, for the people going to school. It dictates a little bit of your life, and that's where I think the culture of the sport comes from. And maybe that's why we maybe don't have it in the US, of this culture of soccer, because maybe if you support an MLS team, you know, teams are born out of communities, in my opinion, and that's why Vermont Green has been like a kind. I feel so lucky that a team that has the same values and that cares about the community as much as I grew up with caring for my team is right next to me. And I'm like, I can't believe it that this has been created so close to me, because now Adam says this all the time, when he drops his kids off at school, there's Vermont Green jerseys everywhere. You know, the kids are growing up, their favourite players are Vermont Green players. They're maybe not these professional players in these big teams, because those big teams aren't in their community. You support your community and you believe that this team, it represents your community. That's one of the things growing up in Liverpool is, if the Liverpool team didn't run, fight and give their all, they were letting the community down, because you're us on the field, you're us on the pitch, and you have to represent what we stand for. And Liverpool as a club is actually a highly political team in terms of what they stand for, and it's got a deep historical meaning. You know, there are things that aren't accepted within the club, and I think Vermont Green's a little bit the same. We want to do as much soccer as possible, but we stand for more than soccer as well. But me and Adam are true believers that we have such a responsibility to win, so that our message as a club goes further. Because without the winning, the club, you know, wouldn't be able to spread its message. And we believe in the message, but we believe that winning spreads the message even further. And one of the things I told the players before every home game this year, And I got repetitive about it, but I felt it was so true. Vermonters, I think they're fighters, and I think they believe in hard work and they believe in getting what you earn. And I was so lucky that Adam brought so many of the best college players in the country, and we're watching them now in their games. And I'm like, my God, we had all these guys. It was like a college all-star team. It was incredible. But as much as the crowd would celebrate goals and celebrate a bit of skill, some of the loudest cheers in our games was someone tracking back 20 yards and making a tackle and a real gritty, hard play. Because I think everyone in the crowd would sit there and be like, if I was lucky enough to be as good as you, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be running, I'd be fighting, I'd be showing this passion and this resilience because I'd think I'm so lucky to be playing here. And I think what we did a great job of as a club was have a group of players that, we said it before every game, this means more to us because we've got a state behind us, we've got a community behind us, and this game, no other team can replicate what this means to us. And so they can't go to the depths and the levels that we can go to as humans, as athletes, as competitors, because they're not playing for something bigger than themselves like we are. And all of those things resonate with my upbringing in Liverpool and my upbringing in the football culture of, you're not just playing to win a game. You're not just playing for the pictures and the autographs. You're playing for your community. You're playing for something bigger, and you're representing a community and a city and a state, whatever it is, and you're doing it for them. And you will get the plaudits along the way, but you have a base level of responsibility to give your all every single time for those people in the stands, the people who are watching on TV, and the people you see on the street, because you're role modeling for them and they want to see what they stand for. So I think, again, I really can't believe so many times I think about it that like all the things I care about are within this club, and it just is a match made in heaven for me.
Thanks for that, Chris. And thanks, Adam. Just the world has been turned upside down on its head right now. And for many reasons, you guys have given people, and I'll just say in Vermont, because I consider myself a Vermonter now, just having lived here for the last several years, the amount of pride that you guys have brought to the state of Vermont and the community and to the fans and all that sort of stuff cannot be underscored enough. I just wanted to say thank you. And I could go on and on and on, but just thank you, Chris. Thank you, Adam, for just bringing us just an unbelievable true source of pride, and your description of just where you grew up and how you grew up, Chris, and all that sort of stuff. I mean, both of you guys are responsible for bringing elite soccer to Vermont, and the pride, and probably could go through every person on the roster and what they mean to you guys and what they mean to the team. But just thanks. And I truly hope that just our listeners, are just really inculcating the fact that what you guys have brought to the country and to the league is just something truly special. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I would echo that. It's probably similar to myself growing up in Canada and hockey and that culture and, street hockey, road hockey, just picking teams, playing every day. And so I got some chills hearing that. I haven't thought about that in a long time. Yeah, Chris, I wanted to ask you too, and I think you maybe buried the lead in just your presence and your intensity. But you mentioned earlier about taking over, not only taking over as the head coach, but like earning the trust of, as you said, some of the best players in the country. And like it or lump it, again, you made an active decision to stay. I'm sure you're making an active decision to stay at Plattsburgh, which is a D3 school, but you're probably having people arrive and look at you as a D3 coach. So how do you take that team over? How did, again, you've talked a little bit, but did you have a plan? Did that plan come to fruition? Did you have to move and shake a little bit with it? Could you just speak about that?
Yeah, I was really nervous about that, I'll be honest. I mean, I think although Adam at the time when we started was a Division 3 coach, he's got such a really strong Division 1 background in terms of his playing and his coaching, and I didn't have any of that, right? So I think Adam had a lot of kind of relationships at Division 1 and could speak about Division 1 experience. I've never worked at the level, I'd never played at the level, and certainly, there's ideas of what Division 3 looks like if you've never been in it. And I know, Cam, you're very well aware that the level of hockey in Division 3 is incredible. And I remember before the final, Adam actually said it to me. He's like, hey, he's a couple of D3 coaches figured this out. He's like, this is big. And it was a really, like, I think I'd forgotten it on the journey a little bit. At the start of the season, it was a big thing, but then we just got wrapped up in the season and I kind of forgot about it. And he brought it back of like, this is a big moment for people who maybe work at this level to show that there's talent at all level. And I'm not really talking about myself. I just think that, like, in coaching, I have a lot of friends who worked in Division 3 and wanted more. And certainly, if I had the opportunity, I would love to have more. But I made a family decision that we wanted to be in this area with my wife's family. We made the decision that basically, how can we get the best of both worlds of her having my wife having the opportunity to be near a family to support us with the kids and things like that, and me being able to work at the highest level of soccer. It could happen to be Division 3. And I'm really content with that decision, but Vermont Green gave me the chance to scratch this itch of working with elite players, because more of a curiosity, not like me sitting there saying I'm good enough to work at this level. I was curious how I would respond to that level. And I don't think it happens without the first few years as the assistant, because as Adam gave me so much responsibility, which was incredible, I think players forgot where to coached and they just saw a coach. And I think I probably thought about it more than the players did. And I remember halfway through this year, a couple of players were like, where do you actually coach? They didn't know. And it's amazing that as coaches, obviously we overthink things. And I was like, wait, they're not actually looking at me as some Division 3 coach. They're just looking at me as their coach. And listen, like, I was fortunate along the way as the assistants. A few of the guys were kind of like, well, why are you there? Maybe you could work at a higher level. And that was a really nice compliment. But, again, that didn't matter to me. And so I think ultimately I tried to, as I said, I was really nervous about it, because I was like, if we lose early, you do become a Division 3 coach coaching these guys, right? And I needed a little bit of luck early on to get a couple of results where people forgot about it, because the moment it starts going wrong, that is what people will start thinking. Well, he's Division 3, he can't manage these Division 1 guys, like he's out of his depth. And I think winning helped with the credibility. And again, I was super lucky to have incredible players, because again, Cam, you coached a long time and Adam coached a long time. We know that the players win games. They absolutely do. We put them in a position to be successful, but ultimately, like, when we were 2-0 down in the last game of the season against Western Mass, where, with a win for them, they were winning the division, and a tie for us, we were winning the division. There was literally no time left. There was no time left, and we got 2 wonder goals with literally, the last kicks of the game. That wasn't coaching. That was players having special moments that bailed us out. I like to think maybe we created an environment that made them think they could get back in the game, but that was players having special moments. And so I think in the end, the winning helped a ton with that transition. And what, I'm so comfortable on the field at practices. I'm probably not that comfortable in any other area in my life. But when I'm on the field, I'm like, this is where I'm safe. This is where I can be myself. This is where, like, I almost lose sense of like worrying about anything, because I'm so happy there. Running a training session, running a practice, even more than games, being on the training pitch with the players, trying to help them develop, but just being around them. That's where I feel the safest in my life. And I think that helped me win over the players, because that's me at my most authentic self, is that moment. I think in other maybe social circumstances or professional circumstances, I'm way more uncomfortable and I'm maybe like making up for some things and overcompensating. But when I'm on the pitch, I'm like, nah, this is me. And I forget where I am. And I just be myself, and I like to think that maybe gave me credibility with the players, because maybe they could just see the passion and someone who prepared. And again, Adam and I couldn't be more suited for each other, because we're obsessives. We're texting each other at all times of night, and like talking about the craziest things when listen, we should be spending time with our families, we should be doing our other jobs, but we like to say we're kind of psychos about it, but we wouldn't have it any other way. And I think the players maybe saw that. They certainly saw it with Adam, and I think they see it with us, that we just had this passion for this to work. And then I don't think they cared where I coached after that.
I will also say, like, a couple things. One is, Chris had the guys that were returning players for us, like, they were all very excited to have him. So there was nothing, coming into this season, there was nothing that he had to prove to them. Like, they were believers, and when I told those guys that Chris was going to be, taking over, like, they were happy and excited, so.
No offense, Adam, I would be too.
Yeah, no, I know. But beyond that, like Chris got an offer right after the season from a professional club, like, within a couple weeks. So he's already had to turn down opportunities, to go up even another level. So he's obviously very much a top coach.
Adam, I wanted to talk about, well, two things. One, first of all, Chris, you talk about the obsessiveness. So we have a little bit of a group chat of coaches that all worked at Norwich together, and there's one of them left. Three of us have moved on, but it's kind of a running joke in the summer. Once the green starts, like Adam is like literally offline. And the best part is if you're around Adam, you know how much he's on his phone, you know how much he's on his watch. So you know he's actually looking and choosing not to respond to us. And we will just like grill him and we will go after him. And whenever I text Adam during the green, it's all caps because I'm always yelling at him. So that is one thing. But I do think, like, Chris, you've said it, Adam, you've done it, myself. And when I went up and interviewed at Norwich, Adam was like the first guy to like get what I was doing. And Chris, it's so cool to hear. And that was like a family move to have the best of both worlds. And I remember having a conversation with Adam, and Adam knows more about hockey due to his connections than I know about soccer. So he's got some friends. He played at BC, obviously a great hockey school. And I remember one time we were watching the Hockey East finals at the Garden, and he's like, "Don't you miss that? Don't you miss that?" Because we had some success when I was at D1, and I just never did getting to that. So I totally understand where you're coming from, Chris. And again, Adam and I have had those conversations, and further to scratch that itch, just so you know, Chris, like that was Matt to me. That was, all right, where can I continue to push my boundaries and where can I continue to get better? Where can I have those conversations? And, Matt was fortunate or kind enough to take my call and take my begging, like, "Hey, can I ask you, how would you do this?" So it's kind of cool to like kind of come full circle on some of that.
I have a quick question, then I'll hand it back over to Adam or Chris. But so we had a conversation with Rob and he's had obviously success at UVM, but I think that the term that's been used online is just the cardiac kids, right? Always coming from behind. Vermont Green coming from behind. Recent stat, Chris, from Liverpool: 6 out of 7 of Liverpool's winning goals this season alone have come after the 83rd minute. I want to there's a thread there, and I just want to understand, do you guys, is this like, what's the corollary? Do you guys play better from behind? Is there a sense of urgency? And I'll draw like American football correlation. Tom Brady, right, took his game to the next level when there was that level, that sense of urgency. There was that laser focus. There was that, there was that sort of that sense of just sense of urgency, if you will. And I just, either Adam or Chris, if you guys can talk to that, because just as a fan, right? I'm not a soccer player. I never played football and all that sort of stuff. But when you're watching, oh my gosh, your heart's coming out of your chest and you're just thinking to yourself, like, I'm turning the volume down, right? I'm just like, I can't listen to the announcers. I just have to watch the game. So like when we're watching you guys play and all that sort of stuff, of course, as a fan, and you guys as a coach, you want the result to be a certain way. But I just didn't know if you guys could talk to that real quick, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go quick and then let Adam carry on, but we're actually doing the same at Plattsburgh this year as well. Like I think we've come from behind in 4 of our 8 games to get results. And I would say that first off, when you're a coach, you never want to be behind, but you need to be behind to see what your team's made of. And then I think for us, I watched UVM on their run and I was so impressed by how they almost embraced that adversity, because I felt that was maybe a flaw in my coaching career, that I hadn't had teams that reacted well to adversity. We were great when we were ahead or we could get ahead, but when in those tough moments, I was always looking at myself like, why aren't my teams having these comebacks? Why aren't we doing this? And we've gotten better in the last couple of years, but I was watching UVM and I'm like, they're doing something different. Something's going on there where that's not luck. They're creating an environment and a culture that allows players to feel still comfortable when they're behind and never give up, and almost grow in confidence that, no, like, you don't understand what you just did scoring against us type of thing. And so with Vermont Green, it was maybe a little bit different because we were so dominant in so many games because we had so many good players. But then at the end, obviously, there's the pressure of the big games. And Adam said it at the time, and it's so true. I mentioned it earlier, our game against Western Mass, where it was basically a league title decider. If we tied or won, we took the division. If they won, they took the division. And that was crucial in terms of home playoff games. We'd never won the league, all of this stuff. And we were 2-0 down in added time. We were after time had expired, essentially. We were in the 93rd or 94th minute.
90.
And we got 95th,
Wow.
right? Which is like, that's impossible. It's like that shouldn't happen. And we got these 2 goals, and the belief from that moment that it was like, when you have a moment like that, you can't be scared of anything from then on. And then we fall behind in the first playoff game, and then we kind of romp home and win that one comfortably in the end. But then the second one, we're playing essentially with the number 1 seed in the country, and we're 2-0 down. But this is where that moment at Western Mass became crucial, because it got us home playoff games. And the crowd from those moments on, they began to impact games. Before, we felt that, yeah, we had a good crowd and it was a fun atmosphere and stuff like that. But in the playoff run, they impacted the games, because we were 2-0 down to Motown, who were the number 1 seed. We get a goal and the crowd just exploded. And there's no doubt that the Motown crumbled under the pressure from the crowd, because we had a couple of games where we basically got 2 or 3 goals in like 6 or 7 minutes. And that's because now you're playing in front of 4,000 or 5,000 people. You've just made a mistake and your psyche's kind of gone, and we were growing. And I think it was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, where we did it once, we did it twice, then we did it a third time. Then it became what we do. This is what we do. And we had, the hardest thing in coaching, as we all know, is keeping guys on the bench happy. We had guys who actually were like, I want to be on the bench because I want to be the guy who comes on and wins the game. Because we were talking about, because Adam had built such an amazing roster, we're like, nobody can keep up with us over an entire game. Nobody. And every substitution we make, we get stronger, because no one can bring the players off the bench that we can bring on. And we have players like, I love my role coming off the bench as the match winner, because they were getting the headlines, right? And it was like, to have guys embracing being on the bench was like mind blowing, right? And I'm like, but again, it was just something that the players, it happened. We got a bit of luck along the way to do it, but then there's this belief that this is what we do and nobody can beat us because we're never beaten. And I think we learned a bit from UVM, and we learned a bit from our own experiences, and it was just an amazing superpower that we had. But I don't know if you want to add to that, Adam.
Yeah, those intangible qualities are always very difficult to kind of put your finger on, right? Like, how do you develop that kind of character to come back? And you referenced Rob. Like, I am fortunate enough to be able to go down and watch some of their practices. They're training at like such a high intensity every day that, like, I think there's gonna be that natural belief. Now, sometimes like you got to get over that hump and like have that moment to then truly believe. What I will say, and Cam's going to appreciate this because he's always given me crap about soccer players rolling around the ground and all that kind of stuff. So I'll tell you a story. But in that game at Western Mass, like this is like an old sort of European style stadium that they have. They've got like a real community around it. There's a supporters kind of. It's like a club across the street, restaurant that is built around the soccer club, and there's all these old Portuguese guys that are in there. They're eating their Portuguese steak, and it's a really cool kind of environment. The stadium is like I said, it's really old. It's a very hard place to play. The fans are not friendly. We had about 250 traveling supporters at the game, which is obviously it's amateur soccer, so it's pretty cool to have that many people. They were taking buses and driving down, and so when they met us there, it was like they're all cheering, and this is 2 hours before the match. Like, they were all there at the bar across the street on the up deck on the outside, drinking and just going crazy. And so there was, the atmosphere was like you could cut it with a knife. Like, it was thick, and it was very apparent. But Western Mass scored a goal in the first half. They scored a goal probably halfway through the second half. We were down 2-0, and again, all we needed was a draw. Get into as the game is going on, they're rolling around on the ground trying to kill time. Their goalkeeper, every time he catches the ball, he's injured. Somebody's got to come out and look at him. And so they're really trying to they're taking their time with throw-ins and free kicks. And, anytime there's a tackle, there's guys rolling around on the ground. And that's, I'll be honest with you, that's not like, we really try to like push against that. It's just bad juju. And we've always tried to be a club. Now, certainly there's some of that creeps into our game as well at times, but it's not kind of like the ugly part of soccer. They call it the dark arts. Like, it's very cultural here in the US. Like, it's not like really part of our culture. So it can be a little funny when American players try to do that kind of stuff. But some of these players, like, they grow up with this as part of their culture. And while we don't like it, it's part of the game and you have to deal with it. But every now and again, you get a referee that can handle that. And so this referee, we're getting frustrated with her and thinking that she's not managing the situation. We get to the 90th minute and they announce 10 added minutes to the game. So their bench is like, their heads are exploding because they're thinking, oh, this isn't right. And like, we're looking at them like, of course it's 10 minutes. You guys have been absolutely taking the piss for the entire game. It's been incredibly frustrating, but the belief that went through the group, and then Chris like putting his hands up like, guys, we've got 10 minutes left, and you could just feel, things kind of shift. And like I said, we get the goal in the 95th minute, a goal in the 98th minute. And, then we're running on the field celebrating. And then again, in the Motown game that Chris referenced, the team that was the top seed in the country, we're down 2-0 again in the second half. And they start just rolling around on the ground, wasting time. Their coaches are shouting for every little thing. It was incredibly frustrating. But what happened in that game was our fans started getting on them. They started getting on the goalkeeper. They started, every time somebody was trying to waste time, our fans were like it enraged them. And so the atmosphere in the stadium was just electric. And when we got the first goal, the game was dusted. Like, it was over. And we scored 2 more goals within 6 minutes. I think we scored 3 goals in 6 minutes. I mean, it was just like a tidal wave of energy. I think that we were really spurred on, by the fans in that moment. But it was like one of those situations where it was like we tried to do things the right way throughout the season. We end up in these situations where these teams are really trying to push the boundaries and try to act and things like that, and they didn't get away with it. And that was pretty cool in that moment for that all to come around.
I just want to add one more thing. Sorry, Adam, but it just kind of, I remembered this when we were 2-0 down at Western Mass. And again, like, you guys as coaches know, like, coaching's lonely, like really lonely. And when we were 2-0 down, I'm like, it was probably 10 minutes to go in the game. And I was like, I got quiet and I was thinking, I've blown it. Right. And this is where we're talking about, like, earlier, you guys, saying Adam stepping aside, and they said he still had a hand. And Adam actually yelled to me as I was like on the sideline, and he's like, I won't say the exact words he said, but he yelled to me from the fence, and he's like, Chris, come on, we're going to get one. Let's go. And I was like,
and I was talking out of my ass. I was just like throwing stuff at a wall. I was like, come on, something worked.
We always forget, like, coaches need coaches too. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying I'd given up, but I was in a bit of self-pity of like, oh, like, we're not going to do this. Like, we came here to win the league title. And next thing, I'm not saying that's what got us back in, but next thing I'm like, all right, I've got to go out on my sword a little bit. Like get coaching again. Come on, let's go. And, coaching can be so lonely. And I think this is why this deal has worked so well, because coaches don't always have someone to talk to. And if they do, they definitely don't understand what they're going through. But I had Adam the full year. Like, sometimes I'm just sitting there moaning, right? And complaining about things, but you need that space to vent. And him and I share a fantastic passion for drinking beer together. And that's where we did all of our best talking and our best dissecting, but that was really helpful to me in that moment of like, hey, just a little jolt of like, come on, people are looking at you in this moment, and your body language isn't right, and your language isn't right. So let's get going again.
Yeah. And I'll also add to what Chris said. Like, one of the things that I thought I didn't do a good job of, and this was at Norwich and with Vermont Green, was like, I thought that my stress and my anxiety over results really affected players. Like, I really started to believe that, and I was having a hard time controlling that. I felt like I had done a really good job putting teams together, and then not being able to see it through, because I felt like in those big games, I was always good as a player in big games. I didn't think that I was doing a great job as a leader in big games. I thought that Chris and I have spoken about this. I don't know if I had the headspace to admit this to you, Cam, in the past, but I felt like my anxiety was really a problem. Like Amerlin, who played for me at Norwich, used to call me Mr. because he could just see it on me. And that's not good. And that was one of the things that I felt like Chris, like, he brought this calmness in those situations to the players, and he brought that. He tried to bring that calmness to me as an assistant, and I would just be like, you know, push him aside. And Cam used to stand behind me at those games, and I think you could probably see some of that too. Again, that kind of stuff serves you as a player because you can get that energy out when you're running around on the field, but it's a little bit different, as a coach and as a leader. I felt like Chris did a phenomenal job with that, and keeping that kind of calmness in the group, and not sort of, having these emotional kind of blow ups during the course of a game. I thought that was a big part of our success this year as well.
I think those are like insanely real, both coaching a coach or having that space. And again, like, Adam, you were that for me for a long time. And when you left, like Colonel Smith kind of seamlessly our relationships burned. I think I needed that. And even to your point, like, I think as my view of my future became different, and like I became a better coach because I was able to almost disassociate wins and losses. Like the best 2 years I ever coached were my first year and my last year. And I don't think it is at all saying the first year I didn't care. I really wanted to see what we were. I didn't care what the wins and losses were. And I was able to almost operate above the fray and not be in the boxing ring and be taking those, So 100%. And then like, as my time wound down, I kind of saw that coming. And then I was able to almost elevate out and relax. And again, I had a ton of those conversations with Matt. And to your point, whether that's body language or anxiety or stress or whatever, I think that has a huge implication. And it's not something that we talk about enough. You and I didn't talk about it enough. We probably didn't identify it enough. And it took guys like Chris to be able to show us the right way. Matt always says, you got to know what right looks like.
I will say, like, I felt the same way about my first year at Norwich. I thought it was the best coaching job that I did. And you don't feel as much maybe ownership of it because you haven't recruited all the players. You've only recruited kind of some of them. And it's not like you just operate in kind of a different headspace there. And, the only time that I could ever really like calm down and really think clearly and, be the coach that I needed to be is when we went behind. I remember there was a game at Norwich. It was 2021. It was the year we had a great team. We should have won. We had the best team. And we went down 2-0 in the quarterfinal. Or we went down by 2 goals in the quarterfinal. We went down 3-1. And it was just like everything like calmed down and slowed down. And I made a lot of good decisions, I felt, coming down. We went into penalties and won the game, and then went on to the final and all that. And I remember my assistant at the time, looking at me and be like, I've never seen you that calm. Like, what was that about? It was just like the situation like forced me into it. I couldn't replicate that when we were ahead or when we were even in a match. For whatever reason, I don't know what that was. There was something about you only had one choice, was to like kind of figure things out, that I could get there. And then when there were more decisions in terms of the emotional part of it, like, do I want to be calm here? Do I want to, push the envelope? I had a hard time really putting my finger on those moments, or being able to emotionally just keep myself in that place. And like, yeah, Chris did a masterful job this year. It was incredible season. And we're going to try to do it again.
That's amazing. Hey guys, I could talk to you guys for hours. And again, I think Matt said we'll probably have to have a check-in maybe after Christmas or something like that and continue. But before we kind of sign off here, I think something that is important for all of us, it sounds like, is if, I don't think in Matt's career, being gone, and in our career, even if we're coming home, like our minds are in different places, just giving you guys both an opportunity to talk about, your family, your loved ones. We've all made family decisions, but just like that support staff, that support group behind you, just have an opportunity to speak to that. And as we close up here.
Yeah. I mean, both of our wives are probably better at their jobs than we
Definitely.
are. So yeah, it goes both ways. Like, Kate obviously does everything that she can. She's the field hockey coach at UVM. So as our Vermont Green season's going on, she's preparing for her season. When I was at Norwich, like, we were both going into the season. That wasn't really a healthy thing for our family. And so as our girls, have gotten older, and we've had to make adjustments. So, I'm doing pickups and drop-offs and those kinds of things, which, I'm very proud and happy to do. But yeah, certainly like the stress that these kinds of jobs, because you do get obsessive over them. Cam, you were the same way. We were always, texting at very bizarre hours, whether it was 5 o'clock in the morning when we're waking up with our kids, or it was 11 o'clock at night when everybody's asleep. And we had some long conversations at those hours too, which was, I remember Julie being like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're like, I'm talking to Adam. She's like, of course you are. Of course you are. Keep it down. And I was just like, and so, our families, it's difficult on them. I can't even imagine what it was like for Colonel Smith, and just sort of the situations that he was in and his family having, I'm sure, following you around the world in different times. But then there's these experiences that you get to have. And there's this great picture of Chris's son, in his arms with the team lifting the trophy after the game. Like, Colonel Smith, you were talking about, making sure that you capture those moments. Like, that's a special moment. There's a moment after the final whistle blew, like, where my girls are in my arms, and you feel gratified in those moments that they get to experience some of that, and they know what went into it, right? And so it's emotional for them as well. So yeah, pretty incredible. Helen came, and I was hanging out with Helen throughout the final, or not the final. It was throughout the game at Western Mass. I was with her for like, probably 45 minutes, maybe an hour of it. And then when we really went behind, I was like losing my mind. So I was over by the fence yelling at players on the other team and being a psycho. Yeah, she both of our families support us in an incredible way, and we hope to be able to repay it. But I know, Chris, you better talk about Helen right now, because she's a saint.
No, I mean, I think as everyone knows, like your significant other or your partner, like, they're crucial to all this, because there's a chance if it's not right, you won't be doing this job, right? You might have to get a quote unquote normal job. Right. And Adam and I, Vermont Green isn't one of those things that we do because it makes us rich in any way. We do it because it's an amazing opportunity and it's a passion. And I'm lucky, like, my wife was a college hockey player, and was a very successful one. So she gets it. She gets sports, she gets athletics, much like Adam's wife, Katie, and, she's been at some incredibly high levels of athletics. So
our wives were both national champions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we weren't.
They were,
so
yeah. But you get a bit of leeway with that because they understand sports and they understand what it takes. And my wife runs a family business. Like, she's way busier than me. She has a really stressful job, but she takes on the brunt of the kids as well, because my job obviously requires nights away and travel and unsociable hours and stuff like that. And I'm so lucky that, like, every now and again, she's like, I just need a night where I'm going to be mean to you. And that's what it's going to take. And you've got to let me get it out. And then tomorrow we'll be back to normal. And I take it. And she's never that mean to me. She's fantastic and so supportive and so invested in it. Again, after Western Mass, she traveled to the game because she thought we might win the league and she wanted to be there. And she's in tears after the game. And I saw Adam's family in tears several times, and the tears of pride, because I think they feel part of the journey and they feel part of it, and they are part of it. And, there's certainly moments where I wish I could be a better husband and a better dad. But again, my obsessiveness interferes with that, and I might be there, but I'm not fully present, and I'm trying to work on that as best as I can. But, as I tell my team here at Plattsburgh, I've got my own demons I'm trying to work through to be better at all aspects of life. I honestly, it's a little bit emotional to talk about it, because I can't even describe the support that is needed to do what we do. And again, they're all different with, as Adam said, Colonel Smith, like, it's similar, but it's not similar. The stakes are different and things like that. But you still need that unconditional support to be successful, because you want to give your entire self to your team, because you feel that's what they deserve, and you want to do that as a professional. But, trying not to give your entire self to your family is a crazy thing to think about, but that's sometimes what happens. But they accept it from us, right? And they understand it. So unbelievable support from them that allows us to maybe operate at the level that we want to operate at.
And let's be clear that both of our wives expect wins.
Yes.
So they make that
Yes.
very clear. Like,
yeah, if
this
we're
whole
gonna
thing
do
ended
this, you
without-
better win.
Yeah.
Hey, before we close out, I just wanted to say, you guys, by the way, I take a lot of notes. So Cam chirps me all the time, Adam, for taking notes, like old school. But That's what I'm looking at, is just the level of self-awareness and humility that you two guys have is elite, and that you guys are so complementary. It's no surprise that the Vermont Green is at the level that it's at. And I would imagine at SUNY Plattsburgh, your team probably feels the same way, Chris, just from having you as a head coach. And so I would just remiss if I just didn't say, spent nearly 30 years in the Air Force of trying to maintain a level of self-awareness and humility. But I'm not sure that I've achieved the level of self-awareness and humility that you guys have. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that. And Cam, you probably feel the same way, but just elite. And I just wanted to recognize that. And so just bravo, gentlemen.
Thank you. And, Cam makes me very aware of my shortcomings on a very regular basis. So
yeah,
he's
Adam, I
very,
know this. I know this.
very helpful.
Adam,
That's a mirror. You do the same. That's how we
goes
get
both
better.
ways.
Yeah, that's right.
Tigers lost last night too, right? But,
buddy, it's been.
There you go.
Yeah, no, I think, we had to kind of get over some of our awareness of our shortcomings probably at the beginning, especially, that first year we were like, I hadn't been around these kinds of players in a while and I wanted to serve them well. And Chris, so that was one of the conversations that we had quite a bit, was just about, like, are we up to this? We figured out pretty quickly that we were, but we also knew that, we like to make fun of ourselves. It's a good time. It's easy. It's very easy. Yeah.
Well, that's guys, again, congratulations. Thank you for what you've done for the state, and just thank you for coming on the podcast. It's been thrilling to hear your passion and your vision come to fruition, and congratulations. So
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Really
thank
appreciate it.
you. Really enjoyed it.